Okay, so today we're here with none other than George Groves, former European, Commonwealth, WBA champion
Yes.
at one point in time.
Yep.
Yeah, so a man who's done it all basically, and we're here to talk about boxing, upcoming fights, and let's get into it. So it's fight week this week. We've got a North Londoner, John Ryder, probably the biggest fight, well, definitely the biggest fight of his career to date. He's out in Mexico up against Canelo Alvarez. Clearly a big underdog, but it's been a tricky 18 months for Alvarez. I mean, he's lost to Bivol, right? He's had a tricky win against Triple G. Do you feel like he's lost some of his hunger that he's shown? This is his 63rd professional match. He's got $200 million in the bank.
Yeah, I mean, they're all really good points, really good points. And you do wonder if maybe, is it ever going to catch up with Canelo, where the big fights, the big occasions, as well as the money, the wealth, the fame that he's accumulated, is the hunger and desire going to be there? We'll find out. But you do find every now and again there will be that exception to the rule who just keeps on going. Floyd Mayweather before Canelo. So it'll be a fascinating one for me this weekend. We've got John Ryder, who's a brilliant British ambassador for boxing. Been a professional a long time now. Me and John Ryder actually boxed each other in the Northwest Divs of the London ABAs, and that was 2007/2008. So since then we both turned pro, but John have followed his career from the get-go. He's been a little bit unlucky at times. Some fights that he felt may have gone his way that didn't. He was edged out by Billy Joe Saunders. He was beaten on the cards, but many people thought he should have won against Callum Smith for his first world title shot. Had the impressive win against Danny Jacobs. And Jacob did have to come over to the UK, fight in London. But a big name, experienced fighter, and John boxed well, stuck to his game plan and got the win that night. And then kind of when it's all up for grabs, he's in there with Zach Parker, he's on a Frank Warren card, he's not signed to Frank Warren, and he knows that if he wins this fight, the funny way that the WBA are with an interim championship, where he either gets a shot at Canelo or he basically inherits a world title. Yeah. So it's a huge fight for him. Bit of a bizarre one because the fight barely got going. We're in the fourth round and Parker pulls out with a hand injury, and you can see at the end that's not Ryder's makeup. He's like shrugging his shoulders. He wants more fight. Yeah. He's probably trained a long time, worked really hard for this, wants a bit more. But he's had his eye on Alvarez for a long time now. I'm sure he's signed to Matchroom, looked after by Eddie Hearn, and Eddie's told him Canelo's next. But until it's signed, sealed, and you booked your flights for Cinco de Mayo, you just don't know. Alvarez, brilliant fighter, a fantastic fighter through and through. He's got the attitude of an old school fighter. He's happy to fight anyone. He wants to knock people out, basically. Sure, he's coming off that loss to Bivol. I think he just bit off a bit too much, more than he could chew. Up at light heavyweight, Bivol's a really good champion. Probably hadn't seen the best of him quite yet at that point, and Alvarez probably thought, I've beat Kovalev at light heavyweight. I can do the same with Bivol. I've cleaned up at super middleweight. But Bivol was too big, too fast, too disciplined, and beat him pretty comfortably for me on the night. Made sense as well, I thought, for him not to go straight back in with an immediate rematch with Bivol. Take the third fight with Triple G. Huge Golovkin fan, but at 40 years of age, his best days are behind him. Up at super middleweight as well, when he'd always been a career middleweight. Still close on the cards, and there's that massive mutual respect between both of them. But Alvarez won. He's had a wrist operation.
Yeah, that's something I was going to mention. Yeah.
So he's just coming off the back of an injury, and sometimes that is, a lot of the time it can be a significant factor.
Yeah, in the back of your mind to some extent. Yeah.
But I think he boxed Golovkin September last year, so we're in May now. That's almost quick bit of maths, that's like 8 months.
Yeah.
I'm sure he had the surgery straight away. So he must have had a really significant amount of time for the rehab. There's been periods of his career, Alvarez, where he feels like he's rushing fights, back-to-back fights, trying to get 3 fights in a year. But this time, he's back to twice a year, which makes sense for him. I can kind of imagine Canelo Alvarez at this stage of his career going back to his hometown in front of 50,000 people.
First time back in Mexico for 12 years.
12 years, yeah.
So
I think we will get a very good version of Alvarez. Not great news for John Ryder, but if you want all the marbles and you want memories in this sport, John Ryder's been dealt a gift, and I'm sure the people around him will say the same. He's got a chance to take on a pound-for-pound king. Whether people think he's the best in the world, pound-for-pound or not, he's the biggest draw, the biggest name in boxing, world boxing. So John Ryder's got a chance to go over there to Lion's Den and shake up the world, and that's a gift.
I mean, he is someone who relishes being the underdog. I think he was the underdog last time out and the time before. So it's for him, he's got nothing to lose, has he? Literally, he can just go in there, and all the pressure's really on Canelo in front of his home fans. So if Ryder can pull a rabbit out of the hat, he would, like you say, shake up the world. And then, I mean, it's a long shot looking at the odds that the bookies have got him. I think he's 8-1, but stranger things have happened.
Stranger things have happened, and as John Ryder's someone to not overlook. I think Canelo's team would know that. They know that he's not necessarily one to overlook. He's a good athlete. He's very strong. He's got decent punch power, so he converts that strength into punch power, and he's neat and tidy.
He's got the footwork.
His footwork is good. He can close the distance very well, very quickly. Power in the legs. He'll spring into range and let his hands go. If Ryder's going to win this fight for me, he's going to have to have a high output, a lot of volume. He's going to have to try and dominate the rounds. Canelo's got a fantastic chin, never been stopped, never really been hurt. I don't think I've seen him get off the floor once to win, but that was a long, long time ago. Might have happened since where I've missed it, but yeah. So you're thinking if you can't stop Alvarez, a points win in Mexico is going to be tough. You don't want to leave it too close. So if your game plan is from John Ryder, I think his game plan will be he's to come out, start fast, be aggressive, maybe try and box off that front foot, try and back Alvarez up. And don't get me wrong, that's not an easy thing to do, of course. In many ways, both their styles match and not necessarily complement each other. So Alvarez also likes to spring in, punches with spite and intent, can definitely whack hard. Ryder will be probably a little bit taller. I think he is taller than Alvarez, and he's used to punching up. Ryder, most super middleweights are taller than him. Zach Parker in the last fight, much taller, longer. So sort of pulling away and creeping in off the back leg won't necessarily have the same effect. He'll have to close that distance like he did with a Smith, but close the distance, sit in the pocket, trade, try and do some damage downstairs, I think, whack the arms, whack the body, and then finish the exchanges. Essentially be the last man to throw a punch at the end of each combination, because that's the eye-catching shots for the judges. They think that guy's in control.
So, like you say, it's kind of hard to visualise an early stoppage for Ryder, but if he can take it to the later rounds, maybe wear him down and then catch him with a not lucky shot, but like a big combination, then maybe there's a chance. That's what we want to kind of hear as British boxing fans, I suppose, don't we? Because we don't want to see him written off by any means, and he won't be. He'll be thinking he can do it. There's no reason why he can't. But yeah, it's going to be a tough one.
No, I mean, he spoke about it for a long time, and they'll be confident in their camp, and I'm sure he's got the right mindset. He won't be happy if he doesn't have a chance. You know, he knows this is his big chance, John Ryder, and he'll be giving it his absolute all. Like he's made that way, he's wired that way. So hopefully, what he's got is enough to push Alvarez, But we've got to be honest, on paper, Alvarez is a level above, performed better, boxed at a high level, been in there with bigger names and champions. But it's boxing, it's boxing, and everyone. It's 1v1, every man on their day, and John Ryder will leave nothing to chance, I'm sure. So I think it's gonna be a great fight. I predict it to be a better fight than probably any of Alvarez's fights against Brits before. That includes Billy Joe Saunders, Callum Smith, which is pretty one-sided. I think John will have he's had a better run-up, better camp than Smith would have had. And then before then, you're talking about, I think, is it Ryan Rhodes and Matthew Hatton?
Yeah, Amir Khan even.
Amir Khan's given away way too much. So, yeah, I think...
he looks in great shape from what I've seen. I saw a video from his camp. He's out in LA, I think. He's got Conor Benn there with him as well, which surprised me a bit. Did that surprise you, seeing he's training with Conor Benn?
He's always, they're friends. I assume, I don't know what Conor's latest situ is, like whether he's got a fight pending, whether he's got an appeal process, whether he's trying to get licensed, maybe out in California now. Yeah, I'm sure Conor's out. Everyone's there for John Ryder, so that's what you hope for, and I think they're quite a close team, run by Tony Sims. John Ryder must be the longest standing man in that gym now. He's been there a long time. He's seen, waves of fighters come through. It'll be a proud moment for everyone who's part of that team, just to be there. But also, if John Ryder goes out and causes a mega upset.
You think he'll be feeling nervous in the lead up to the fight, or just wanting to get it on now? Like, how did you feel nervous before your biggest fights against Froch and the likes, or?
Yeah, I mean, you are.
Feed off it,
you are nervous. You don't want it to consume you. So everyone's a bit different. My nerves are laced with excitement. To be honest, I would usually be really, really excited, and then you're trying to contain that excitement because essentially it's just adrenaline, just wasted. So you save that for fight night. Save that for the fight, not even for fight night. But it'll be tough for him because it's a massive, massive fight. Everyone who knows John Ryder is on probably messaging him, asking how he's feeling, and he might be that fighter who likes to talk about it, talk the ears off of the build up to a fight, or he might be someone who likes to shut away from it. I'm pretty sure he'll be nervous, but at the same time, he is in a win-win situation, as you said earlier. He can, he's a massive underdog. No one's really expecting him to win. But he could go out there and shock a lot of people. I don't think it's in his makeup to just go and give a good account of himself. I think he would, if he come back with that, he wouldn't be satisfied. Especially where he is now in his career, it's not necessarily, well done mate, you can live to fight another day, or get matched again against another champion, on the B-side. He's done his B-side fights and he's come through them and he's won. This is the ultimate B-side fight where, you are the underdog, but you go out and you win this, then his life changed exponentially, and forever.
Yeah, especially the bank balance as well. I didn't imagine. Yeah, I did see that he said against Zach Parker, I think that was in the O2. He was walking to the ring and he was struggling to focus on the task at hand. He said so. He's been reading some books, and obviously going into that arena, there's going to be 50,000 Mexicans there. I suppose if anything, that's going to focus your mind.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I think he's got an experienced team around him, as long as they keep nudging him in the right direction. And John himself is vastly experienced. He's been a pro boxer, pro athlete, probably training like a pro athlete for a long, long time now. So he should go out and do his version of himself. He's going to be the best one to do it. I wouldn't really necessarily at this point be trying to look to reinvent yourself or change too much. If there is a way of helping you focusing on the task, then so be it. But I don't think it's rocket science for John Ryder at this point. It's you go, you're going. You're the away fighter in a stadium fight. Go out there and do your thing. Just go out there and do your thing. He has boxed. I'm not sure. I think he has boxed in LA before. Boxed out in the States on a DAZN card, but he would have been the favourite in that fight. It wouldn't have been a tough fight. Whereas usually when he's when he's had to box as the away fighter, it's still been in London.
Yeah.
It was with Danny Jacobs, it was with Zach Parker. This time he's the away fighter, and he literally is on the other side of the world. So that was something to factor in. I hope he's enjoyed his time in LA, and he's managed to hit the ground running once he's out there, continue the rest of his camp, and then once he gets to be, he must be in Mexico by now. And
you'd imagine so. Yeah, acclimatizing to the weather and then just the food and everything. I suppose it'll be just a very different experience from what he's used to, but one that will hopefully galvanise him and touch wood, maybe hopefully get him the win.
Yeah.
But in moving on to another fight that's slightly further into the future, the rematch between Eubank Jr and Smith. The first one was, I don't know how you predicted it in the lead up to it, but a few people must have been shocked at the outcome. Do you see a different outcome this time around? Do you think Eubank Jr will be more mentally prepared for it?
Well, it just goes to show. I was commentating on that fight that night, and I thought Eubank was a favourite going into it. I picked him as the winner. I could see how a lot of people were making a case for Liam Smith. Vastly experienced, boxed at a high level as an amateur. From a fighting family, been in the pro gym for probably close to 10 years at the time, and boxed at the highest level, former world champion, and always gave a really good account of himself. Never left short, never been exposed. I think the only time he's ever really been stopped was against Canelo Alvarez. So, but I thought Eubank, who's boxed up at super middleweight, very strong fighter, high work rate, great punch output, punches very well, punches correct, decent punch power, great hand speed, and up until that point, a decent chin as well. He boxed the likes of me at super middleweight. I was #1 in the world at the time. He'd boxed James DeGale, who's probably not on fire on all cylinders, but he'd been in there with Arthur Abraham and many others. So it showed he'd boxed at a high level. And the first fight was it was confusing. I mean, I don't think it was definitely wasn't the best Eubank. Eubank didn't look quite like himself. The resistance had evaporated, punch resistance had gone, and he has to figure out why that happened, what it was, put a finger on it, and make sure it doesn't happen next time. Because, there's an array of reasons why you can be flat on fight night and your punch resistance might not be there, your punch output, your power. You might have got camp wrong. You might have picked up a slight virus in the build-up. Might have misjudged the weight making, and that might have been a little bit too tight. You might have just got your weight down too early and been too lean. You might have took a knock in sparring, which in the press conference afterwards to announce the second fight, Smith was kind of hinting at whether he'd gone into the fight with some sort of concussion. You always hope not. Yeah. And you always hope trainers are totally aware of that, but there's a lot on the line, and fighters sometimes don't know. Yeah, they keep under their hat, or maybe just be in a bit of denial of it. Mm-hmm. But I think this time round,
will that leave scars on his psyche though?
I thought Eubank would go in a different direction. I know he had the rematch, and I know the rematch, there would probably have been a decent amount of money in it for him, and it would have had to have been on pay-per-view, so it's back on Sky Box Office, which has to be a big, has to get promoted right for that. The Conor Benn fight sort of is a difficult one to make. It won't be made in the UK, so is it made abroad, and is that the right fight for him? What weight could they do it with? Would there be a backlash from boxing fans because of it? So
they refused to sanction it, didn't it, at the weight that they were going to fight at? So
right,
it'd have to go up a little bit higher. But yeah, I mean, it's a tricky one. From his perspective, there's probably more money in that fight, I would have thought. But he wants to avenge his defeat, I'd imagine, first. So maybe that's why he's taking a rematch. Yeah,
quite possibly. You'd imagine. I don't know how he evaluates Conor Benn and Liam Smith. If them two boxed each other, you'd say Smith would win. comfortably, naturally a bigger guy, vastly more experienced, and on a good run. Conor Benn, a lot less experience and, you know, in a bit of a torrid time right now mentally. So, but that we've landed on the Smith fight. I think Smith will be confident. I think Smith, what you see is what you get with Smith right now. You know, he's not going to reinvent the wheel at this stage of his career. His style is his style. He can change and adapt subtly within camp to, you know, come up with a game plan for opponents. That's part of what he can do right now. But I'm not sure what if or anything he would think to do differently.
I think he needs to do a lot differently, doesn't he? Really, I think. Well, Eubank got Roy Jones Jr. back into training for that first fight. Maybe that wasn't the ideal kind of scenario. I know you're someone that changed trainers throughout your career, worked for you, but maybe that's something that he's thinking about now. Was that a good thing? Was it? I don't know.
I saw Eubank recently. I think it was the day after he announced the fight, and he said he was flying out to Vegas and he was going to train out there. So I don't know if he's bringing in Jones, who's usually based in Florida, or whether he's training with someone else in Vegas. Or whether he just wants to get out of the UK for this camp, which makes sense as well. You know, Vegas is a tough place to live and train, and if you can put yourself in a sort of hurt locker out there, it's dog eat dog. So that might be what he's trying to get back to, that sort of temperament. But it's a must-win fight for him, an absolute must-win fight. He, even if he's back to his best and it's a really slogging fight, he's still got to come through with a win.
Doesn't matter how he gets it, really, does it? It can be grind it out on points like he's done so many times in the past, but you'd imagine maybe there'd be a part of him that wants to knock Smith out the way that he was knocked out, but like you say, either way, a win's a win.
Yeah.
Do you feel like do you think he's kind of maxed out his potential talent at this point, or is there something holding him back psychologically? Maybe the fact, you know, that people have been getting in his head. Callum Smith seemed to get in his head before the fight last time, said some kind of unsavoury things, but hopefully the build up this time won't be kind of along those lines. But what's your feeling? Is there more to come from Eubank Jr? There must be.
I always thought so, I always hoped so, but then we boxed 5 years ago now, so time does fly, and that was probably the best version, the best Eubank I've seen. You know, I'm going to be biased, but he was on a monumental rise at that point. He had his own deal with ITV. He'd come after, beat Arthur Abraham, it was just well matched, and we'd gone into the tournament and he quickly became the favourite. His dad was doing a fantastic job of talking him up, and so was the tournament organisers. And then by the time we came round to a box, he was favourite going into that fight. And he was a force. Like he's a force. Up from middle up to super middleweight, but was comfortable in the weight. He had to give away a lot of natural size to me, and I was able to control him, you know, at range and try and walk him onto shots and nullify his good work. And then after that, you know, it's always hard to recover from a loss. You have to rebuild. It takes a while. But he reinvented himself back down at middleweight, and COVID hit and a few other things, and he wasn't really that busy. So I don't know if the very best Eubank is past us now. You know, at the age, I think he's probably about 34. He's always been a tremendous athlete. And that was almost at the expense of, you know, being a skillful fighter. He didn't have a stellar amateur career. He didn't have that sort of pedigree. So he brought in Roy Jones to teach him a thing or two. And I think Jones did make improvements. But then for Eubank, you don't want to get stuck in the middle of both. You don't want to try and fight like Roy Jones Jr. when essentially you just want to sit in the pocket and let your hands go. Yeah. If I'm working with Eubank now, then that's what I'll be advising him. Like, sink your feet into the floor, sit in range, don't take no shots, don't give away no shots, but don't necessarily try and be clever and box off the back foot with Liam Smith, because Liam Smith is cool under pressure, fights with a high guard, doesn't really give away a lot of shots, and has a good chin himself. So you want to break him up downstairs for body shots and then impose your will on him in the second half of the fight. And if you're Smith and you're in Smith's team, then you're saying, don't let Eubank do that.
Yeah.
If Eubank is going to box off the back foot and try and play the jab game with you, then, even for a while, you might come up short because Eubank's got quite fast hands. He's got a bit of height and reach advantage, but at some point you will dip out to your left and spring out with a jab, or time that right hand with the jab as you pull your head off the line, something like that. And he knows that, it was weird how much the shots affected him last time, Eubank.
Isn't it? Because he's always had such a good chin up until now, seemingly, but on that night it was all different.
But yeah, I mean, there wasn't huge mega shots, and Smith's not known for being a one-punch knockout artist and coming up from light middleweight. So if his punch resistance is catching up with him, Eubank, as the years have gone on, or if he's just a little bit too tight at the weight, or if something else happened, then he needs to address that somehow before this next match.
It will be intriguing. So another UFC fighter looking to cross over into boxing is Darren Till. He's been rumoured to be potentially fighting Carl Froch, someone who obviously you shared a ring with. How do you see that going, and do you think these MMA fighters are biting off more than they can chew in the boxing ring?
Yeah, I think they are, to be fair. If they're going to end up in the boxing ring, then you're always biting off a bit more than you can chew. Carl Froch, he's probably still an animal. Do you know what I mean? He's getting on a bit, but he keeps himself in relatively good nick, and I think he's still got plenty of fight left in him. So in the boxing ring, I wouldn't suggest any YouTubers or anyone from any other discipline, any other sport, sort of getting in the ring. But you might tease Froch out of it. Who knows? I'd say let's have one 1v1. Have one boxing ring, maybe one in the cage. He's up for that.
That's
and then if it's one all after that, then they have a final. I don't know, play chess or something.
Yeah, I can see it happening. I'm not sure who my money would be on in the chess match.
Yeah.
Probably Froch, to be honest, but Darren Till's a good guy. I've spoken to him, and he seems to have his head screwed on. He was trained out in Brazil. He's done a lot. Got stabbed and survived that. So yeah, he's seen all sides of life.
Well, there's a lot to it at the moment. There's this crossover appeal. There's so many platforms, isn't there, for fights to be made and sold on. Everyone's competing, from the TV side to get these events together, the promoters and the fighters. So past and present, that everyone's up for. And once is hopefully a luxury that you have at the end of your career or in the midst of the twilight of your career, that if you're like a Carl Froch and you've had your boxing days are over, but there are some exhibition type bouts out there for you, and you're up for them and they're safe, and there's money to be made and entertainment to be had, then I don't mind it. I think each sport and each discipline will always be strong enough that would be the route that legitimate athletes will go down. So. Yeah, I'm not opposed to it.
More the merrier.
Yeah.
Have you seen any of the Kingpin productions? Have you seen that? They're getting. It seems like a massive mixture of people in. They've got OnlyFans models fighting. I'm interviewing Elle Brooke next week, and yeah, what do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean that I haven't been to any of their shows yet, but it's that again, that crossover. It's bizarre how, for me, sometimes it's bizarre where I'm like. They all want to do boxing. They all want to do boxing. So have they caught the boxing bug, or is there just a bigger amount of money in boxing that is a big draw? Because you can be a YouTuber or such and have millions of followers, and you assume, well, they must be earning a really good revenue from that. But then they all want to box as well. So it's like, well, how much money are you getting from this if boxing has to take precedent? Because boxing, if these fighters wanted to, I don't know, Elle Brooke, I've seen her in the gym at Mark Tibbs's gym, he's a professional coach with professional fighters, and I think she's training there as well. Yeah. So you're not doing like one hour a week happy pads with a PT. They're in the gym training like pros or doing the best they can. Yeah. So and that's across the board in for all the different fighters that sort of being attracted to it. Sometimes you will see two raw novices baking up the tail end of the show, but That might be just the start, and obviously they will improve if they stick with it. And yeah, it's a different audience. It is a truly different audience. And sometimes when legitimate boxing people get involved in, for example, a YouTuber event, they'll justify it by saying it's new eyeballs, on the sport we love. But it's new eyeballs on what they're watching. We'll always have the same eyeballs on watching our boxing. I don't think there is a huge crossover. I don't think a YouTuber or a fan of these YouTubers will all of a sudden watch this and go, I want to watch the Canelo fight next week, because it's not why they've tuned in for it. But essentially, it is boxing. It's boxing that's in the headlines, and at the moment, one doesn't get in the way of the other, so I don't really have a problem with it. There's still plenty of pay-per-view dates out there for fighters to have big fights and earn money, and for the fans to go and watch that. It's not like if you wound it back 10, 15 years and you only had Sky Box Office that only had 3, maximum 4 pay-per-views a year, and it's Ricky Hatton competing with Jake Paul. You'd be like, well, I'd rather watch fucking Ricky Hatton win a world title than Jake Paul fight a NFL player or something. But yeah, there's plenty of room for everyone.
Yeah, I agree. I think maybe the crossover is working both ways. Maybe boxing fans are signing up to OnlyFans now.
Maybe
that's the motivation, I suppose, to spread the brand into.
Well, I had Ebony Bridges, who's a world champion, legitimate professional female world champion, on my podcast, but has an OnlyFans account. And we didn't get into the nuts and bolts of it because it is too personal. But it was like, how much energy goes into one or the other, and how much money goes into one or the other. Right. And then obviously life after boxing is maybe OnlyFans, but then again, maybe it's not. Maybe life after boxing will be in boxing because it won't be OnlyFans. Yeah. At the end of the day, they're each their own, and go with the times. And boxing can be a tough sport, so if there are ways to get multiple revenue streams, then why not?
Boxing seems in a healthy place.
Yeah.
OnlyFans seems in a healthy place. Just let them both coexist.
So you'll find out more next week.
So it's going to be interesting. But yeah, one final topic I was going to ask you about, and if you don't want to talk about it, it's fine. You're Chelsea.
Yeah.
Obviously playing Arsenal tonight. I am an Arsenal supporter for my sins, so obviously we've blown the league. You haven't had the best season either, but in terms of managers, Frank Lampard's back there at the moment. Is he the kind of guy you want to see take the job long term, or do you think, obviously the owner's probably got different ideas? Who would you have?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a Lampard fan through and through. When I was fortunate when I first started getting to go to the games. It was Lampard. I was like 15, and Lampard was the man. And he was there forever, yeah, and obviously John Terry as well. But I don't understand that part of football. Like it doesn't happen in boxing. It's not like you can be winning, and then something goes wrong and you can't win ever again, and then they change the manager, and then you win the next 3 games. Like you haven't changed the team. So that's
a weird one, isn't it?
It's a weird one with football. And Lampard's come in, and to be fair, sadly, he hasn't just given that kickstart to get going.
I feel like the players are down tools a bit just till the end of the season. They're just kind of like, we're not getting into the Champions League now. So,
well, maybe, but I don't. I'm not a footballer. I don't know footballers well enough, honestly enough. It must be exhausting being a footballer when the amount of games they play, the amount of time they spend away from home, the amount of time that they're just in each other's company, and how ruthless that sports world in general can be. But down in tools, like, it's not part of anyone's vocabulary in boxing. You can't do that. You have to make every second count. I think talking about Pochettino maybe coming at the end of the year. Yeah. I thought he was an exceptional manager when he was at Tottenham, and
it's normally the other way around. Ex-Chelsea managers go to
it might come the other way now.
Yeah, I think it needs someone like that, doesn't it? It feels like someone who's got the experience at the top clubs, and he's been at PSG as well, hasn't he? So, but yeah,
I think you ultimately at top end of football, I don't know how much coaching they're doing and how much time they're spending developing a strategy game on game, and they must be doing that, but they just need the ear and the respect of the players. You know, there's got to be that element of fear and love together, you know, and
effect sort of
thing. Yeah, maybe. You know, and maybe Ferguson or Mourinho might edge too far on the fear factor, and then a Klopp might be a little bit too much on the love factor. And
I looked a bit scary the other day on the touchline. You see him shouting in the face of the fourth official when he pulled his hamstring when Liverpool.
Oh, has he? Yeah. I read it, but I haven't seen it.
That's quite funny. Yeah.
Well, that's it. Maybe it's not all, you know, it's all sunshine and rainbows now. They just have to get the work. But football's brutal, absolutely brutal, and more so than anything, loads of Chelsea people, past and present, have said that they, you know, under the new setup, they didn't want, you know, a conveyor belt of managers coming through like it was under Roman Abramovich.
Working out like that at the moment.
Nah, yeah, I'd like to see managers given time, you know, a season or two. But I know it's obviously a business as well, and it's brutal. So you will sort of need some success.
When they're spending the amount of money that they spent, they're going to want it relatively quickly.
Yeah.
So that seems to be what happened with Graham Potter. The results weren't there. Spent the money, so out the door.
You're out, yeah.
The next one. But I feel like the owner is to blame though, more than the managers at the moment. Like the culture that he's created seems like a bit of a sort of revolving door in terms of the players as well, just buying as many as you can, and sort of a lot of the players that have come through the youth system at Chelsea have been shipped off, haven't they? Like Tammy Abrahams.
It's been like that at Chelsea forever. It feels like if you go through there's not many world-class players who probably weren't at Chelsea at some point. But
Salah was there, De Bruyne was there.
Yeah. And they usually just buy them back for like, you know, a couple $100 million more than they sold them for. But yeah, I think it's not ideal, is it? You know, if it must add pressure if you're spending all that money bringing players in and you expect them to perform straight away, get the wins. It might take them a little bit of time to bed in. And find some form. I don't know.
See what happens tonight.
Yeah.
Tonight, but,
they might kickstart your campaign back in action.
I'm worried about we might kickstart yours, but yeah, we'll probably end up just being a 0-0 or something. But yeah, I think that probably wraps it up quite nicely there.
Lovely.
Yeah. George Groves, thanks very much for your time, mate. It's been a pleasure.
Lovely, thank you.
Thank you. Cheers, man.